Hello, I'm Tom Maybury, a poet, parishioner, and retired Army Lieutenant Colonel with a passion for military history. Over the years, I've enjoyed collecting artifacts and memorabilia about Pohick Church, particularly from the era of the American Civil War. This was a devastating time for many churches, with Pohick Church's elevation high above Confederate troops camped at the Occoquan River. It was frequently occupied by Union soldiers because Pohick Church is located on a high point. The Union Army also used it as a balloon launch site. Here at Pohick, the Union Army launched its first UAV to watch for any Confederate troops that might quickly threaten Washington, D.C. The balloon was a tethered hydrogen balloon with a basket hanging below, carrying an observer with a spyglass. The hydrogen was obtained by blowing water vapor over hot coals to disassociate the water. Then the hydrogen was collected above and piped to the balloon. This system was invented by aeronaut pioneer Thaddeus S.C. Lowe. There were actually several skirmishes at Pohick Church. One occurred on August 18, 1861. Captain William H. Boyd, 1st New York Cavalry, charged 20 Confederate cavalrymen at Pohick Church. 2 Confederates were wounded. 1 Union cavalryman was killed, and 2 were taken prisoner by the Confederates. On October 4th, 1861, Colonel Christian and the 26th New York Volunteers engaged Captain Robert Randolph, Company H, 4th Virginia Cavalry, at Pohick Church. Although both sides fired at each other, there were no deaths or injuries reported by either side except for horses. Between 1862 and 1863, the church was gutted by the 2nd Michigan Volunteers. The Union soldiers dug up Pohick's cornerstones and stole the contents. Soldiers carved graffiti as high as they could reach mounted on a horse. A carved M for Michigan Company was preserved over the window on the southeast wall. This M was preserved by the church to memorialize this part of the building's history. This M also distinguishes Pohick from its sister church, the Falls Church, in early photographs. Horses were stabled inside the church. Union soldiers burned the wooden pews and other interior wood for firewood. They carried off woodwork, sconces, doors, door latches, and hinges, the souvenirs of General Washington's church. Over the years, some of the families have returned these souvenirs to Pohick Church, along with their stories. For instance, one soldier took a communion rail baluster that was later returned. During Pohick's restoration, architects used artifacts like this one original baluster to create all the other balusters. From returned items like these, as well as colonial vestry records, Pohick was able to restore its interior details and colors much later. Meanwhile, in January 1862, Private Robert Snedden described the damage done to Pohick Church during the Civil War. Now, the church was in ruinous condition. Windows were broken, doors gone, pews nearly gone, being used for firewood by our pickets. The ceilings broken by the rain coming through the roof, walls discolored black by smoke, etc. The mahogany pulpit was half cut away and carried off for relics, while the cornerstones had been unearthed and the contents carried off. Washington had lain this stone in 1765. The soldiers who got it out must have found valuable relics. There was not much left for the relic hunters now. Even the sconces and doorknobs and hinges are gone. Private Snedden also painted this watercolor that vividly depicts the Civil War destruction. In 1874, like other churches of that post-war era, Pohick Church rebuilt its interior to restore its functionality, but not its original interior architecture. Reverend Samuel Wallace, rector, recorded that a man from New York was interested in restoring the church and collected $2,400 from prominent families in New York and Philadelphia to restore the church functionally so that regular worship services could resume. The interior furnishings included a different kind of reredos in the Gothic style, contributed by a church in the Episcopal Diocese of New York. For a few decades, the interior of Pohick Church had a completely different look. With pews in rows, in 1875, Pohick Church was reconsecrated by Bishop Johns. It wasn't until the early 1900s that Mount Vernon's superintendent, Harrison Dodge, and the Mount Vernon Ladies Association combined forces to restore Pohick's interior to its colonial origins. But that's another story.